Welcome back to Expediting Change. I appreciate all the love I've been getting on the podcast. For me, Expediting Change in this podcast was really art for me. It was just me putting information out in the air, and the overwhelming response that I got was completely love. I sincerely appreciate it, and I'm going to continue doing it because we want equity now. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself as we get right into the Expediting Change podcast. Hi there.
Hello, great to be here.
Thank you for coming. I know that you are a
Nope.
little bit busy.
Yeah, no.
just a little bit busy with all of Maryland.
My pleasure. It's, I never want to pass up an opportunity to talk about these important issues and talk about what we're doing in the agency and provide information to people. So thank you for giving us the opportunity.
I love it. And even before I get into the questions, though, I have to actually lead with that. Like, your word is your bond. Like, you, from day one when we met, you said if we need you, call you, and you're available. Yep. There has not been one time that I've reached out to you, whether text, phone call, email, and you have not responded. So thank you for coming on the Expediting Change podcast.
Thank you.
I know you're really busy. I'm going to dive into the first question if you're ready.
Sure. Let's go for it.
All right. What has been the most challenging aspect of transitioning into this position, and how have you navigated those challenges? Actually, I'm sorry. Look at me already, team. I said I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, and then I jump right in. This is Expediting Change. We're going to expedite right to the question.
Podcast.
See?
Yep.
I'm so excited. All right, so let's back up.
Sure.
And let's give the audience an opportunity to hear you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Brooke Lierman. I am the 34th Comptroller of the state of Maryland, the first woman to hold this position, as you said.
Love it.
And thank you. I grew up in Montgomery County. Worked on campaigns, helped start a mentoring nonprofit out of college. Some of my college friends started it in college and then turned it into a nonprofit after college. And then went to law school because I said, hey, somebody's going to pay me to argue for a living? That sounds great.
Don't tell my son that.
So then after college, after law school, I came back to Baltimore because I got a federal clerkship. And so worked for a federal judge and then worked as a civil rights and disability rights lawyer for many years. And while I was there, actually it's funny, my first day of work, I went to take the number 10 bus in Baltimore, downtown Baltimore. I lived in Fells Point. I went to take the number 10 bus to work. Number 10 bus did not show up.
Oh, no.
I know. So I ran home, got my husband. He took me to work. And then I just had a series of, it was really realized that sometimes the bus came on time, sometimes it didn't, sometimes it'd go by me because it was full and wouldn't stop. And, just sort of got frustrated at what I saw as a really substandard transit system in a major American city. And I'd always relied on public transit in different places I'd lived, and so was frustrated, and then started looking at schools because my husband and I were thinking about having kids. And I will say the schools in Baltimore City did not look like the schools in Montgomery County where I grew up. And I thought, how is this the same state?
For sure.
How are we okay with this?
For sure.
I am not okay with this.
For sure.
And so it turns out the state runs our transit system, of course, in Baltimore. It's MTA. And also the state largely contributes to helping Baltimore City's schools for capital financing because the city just doesn't have the money to put in. And I thought, we got to do better.
For sure.
This is not okay.
For sure.
So I ran for state delegate and spent 8 years as a state delegate representing all the neighborhoods around the waterfront in Baltimore. It was a really interesting district because it had the largest relative income gap of any legislative district in the state.
Wow.
So we had both the Ritz-Carlton and the Four Seasons, and we also had some of the largest public developments east of the Mississippi River. So it was a very wide, and I loved every inch of it. I loved representing all the different neighborhoods because at the end of the day, the families, people all want the same thing.
Absolutely.
Right? They want a safe, great neighborhood to raise their families in, great schools to send their kids to, easy access to getting to good jobs. And I thought, this is what I want to advocate for. And so loved my 8 years in the General Assembly, working on the Appropriations Committee, really learning about our state government. Peter Francho decided to run for governor, and after serving for 4 terms as comptroller, And so there was an open seat. And I said, comptroller is a really interesting job because there are building blocks to the job.
Yep.
But I think it could be more than it is. Like, I think, we only have 3 independently elected officials: governor, attorney, comptroller, attorney general, comptroller. We need the comptroller to really be an advocate for businesses, bringing people together, working with communities, being out there more, talking about the racial wealth divide and how to solve it, thinking about our minority business enterprises, thinking about using the data of the office to drive change. So, maybe that's something I should throw my hat in and run for. And I did. And so here I am, a few years later, sworn in January 2023.
Yep, congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but I love it. I'm really excited to be doing this work. There's a lot of challenges, but also amazing opportunities ahead.
So January, what date were you sworn in?
January 16th.
And your Valentine's birthday. I did my research.
I am, so February 14th.
That had to be a great birthday party. It had to be a great birthday
It was a
gift.
fun winter. It was a really, and of course I got sworn in, and 2 days later Wes got sworn in.
Nice.
And so that was really exciting.
Nice.
And it's just been wonderful working with Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, Attorney General Brown. Really, it feels like a new day in Maryland government. I think this election was the first time all those seats had been open in literally decades.
Wow.
They had never been open at the same time before. So it was exciting.
And as you said, too, qualitatively, not quantitatively, it does feel different. Like I feel, I've been in Maryland since 2010, and it does. The businesses that I have, and as you mentioned, the racial, the wealth gap, but the politics feel different. It does feel good nowadays.
That's
great. It does feel good.
Good.
And that is credit to all of you. So now we'll jump into the first question.
Now we got the challenges.
Now we get it. Now we rock it.
Yeah.
What has been the most challenging aspect of transitioning into this position, and how have you navigated those challenges?
Sure. So I have 2 answers to that. The first is sort of a what on earth? My second day on the job, I'm sworn in. Next day, Deputy Chief of Staff, Madam Comptroller, yes. We have a situation in the building. So the Office of the Comptroller is located, our headquarters we're an agency of 1,200 people. Our headquarters is the Treasury Building in Annapolis, big, beautiful building right near the State House, where we have about 600 people in 2 buildings, 2.5 buildings there. So she comes to me and she says, we have a situation in the Treasury Building, and I said, what? And she says, we have a bat infestation. And I was like, what? A bat infestation? What on earth? So I felt like this was in some ways a good sort of analogy or metaphor for what what was happening writ large in the agency. There'd been bats there for months and months, and no one had gotten them out. Bats.
And you said day 2.
Yeah, and they'd been there for months and months and months.
I don't do bats.
No, nobody does bats. They're a serious health hazard.
Yeah.
So, and I said, like a couple bats? And she said, no, like the other day there were like 17 bats counted.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, crazy.
And they're blind. They'll fly right into you.
Oh, it's bad. So we actually evacuated that floor, had to bring DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, worked with them and the Department of General Services to get somebody in, to close all the holes, to figure out where they were coming from, where their nests were, get them out, shut it off. I mean, it was crazy. So we got the bats out. So accomplishment number 1.
I'll come to the office now.
Yeah, safe working conditions for the employees. But I think that was really indicative of sort of the state of repair of the buildings.
No doubt.
And of the agency writ large.
No doubt.
Writ large. And I will say, our biggest challenge is really that we have incredibly outdated systems and underpaid and too few team members and a constrained budget environment, right? If given all the resources I needed, we could turn the agency around, in a year. New systems, more people, answer all the phone calls, but we don't have that, right? We have a constrained budget.
Yeah.
And so we have to really be thoughtful about how do we make government work better.
No doubt.
But do it in a way that we can afford.
Absolutely.
So our all of our, I'll get more into this, but all of our systems are in COBOL, our IT systems are like in COBOL on a mainframe. Like they're all from when I was in high school.
For sure.
And so they're breaking down. They don't provide any transparency. They're inefficient. So we have to move all these systems into, new cloud-based systems, but we're doing it with too few people. And, so I think our biggest challenge is really meeting the demand, but doing it in a way that doesn't break the bank.
Absolutely.
And we're doing it by being smart.
Absolutely.
So first we said, okay, we need the right team members. Hired the agency's first ever CIO, Chief Information Officer.
Nice.
Hired a great new chief of staff, reorganized our leadership structure to make sure there's accountability, but also service is forefront. So we're working for people.
Yep.
And that way we were able to be strategic and put together a plan, including bringing in a customer service management tool.
Nice.
We're going to launch a new website so that people can self-help more and don't have to call and sit on hold for 45 minutes.
Absolutely.
But also now we're moving all of our systems slowly but surely over the next few years into a new cloud-based system so people can get what they need and see it rather than needing to call or email in. So really I was faced with an agency that was outdated.
Absolutely.
Pretty stagnant, and with too few resources to overhaul it as quickly as I'd like.
And that's an extra job. Like that shouldn't have to be in the job description, right?
Yeah. So
you're building the house while you're in it.
Right. Well, that we are. We're really rebuilding the house. And I actually mean that literally too. Like there were the bats, but then if you went into our bathroom, like the bathrooms were from the 1950s and had never been updated. And I was like, I can't ask professionals, like people who are coming to work to use these facilities. So we got a little bit of money, grateful to the governor and the General Assembly, to help like refresh our bathrooms, right? Like just basic stuff.
Absolutely.
That you wouldn't think you'd need, but that really makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. People feel better when they're in an environment where they feel they can flourish.
Totally.
If I go to a clean bathroom, makes me a little happier.
I know.
And not see bats.
Right, and not see bats. It's funny, we had this wonderful executive assistant in the front office, Valinda. She had been with the agency for 50 years. And she decided to retire to take care of her husband. And at her retirement party, she said some of these efforts to revitalize the building, I had started them. And she said, I have worked for 5 comptrollers, but it took the woman comptroller to get us new toilet paper dispensers.
No
and
doubt.
she was not playing.
No doubt.
She was so happy. People were like cheered.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. And I said, like sometimes you got to sweat the small stuff.
Oh, you do. And,
right?
And the personalization of it from a woman's point. I started the National Society of Black Engineers at Buffalo State College.
Oh, very cool.
My vice president was a guy. When I switched and my e-board, my executive board was all women.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to all my guys who were my VPs. We did times 10.
Yeah.
And then I actually had one of my friends who's a female. She said, Shomari, you hired me to do this executive position. Don't do it for me. I was like, oh, okay. My guys would just be like, Shomari got it. They were like, no, this is what we're going to do. And we took off as an organization.
That's awesome. That's
we
really
totally
cool.
took off.
Yeah. So there you go. Challenges, working around it. Challenges also, they are opportunities, but you've got to work to realize that opportunity.
No doubt. So as you know, we have an organization, which is a charter managed organization.
Yep.
Equity Now, non-for-profit. That manages Legends Charter Schools, so we fundamentally believe in financial education.
Right.
I think I'm sitting here talking to the right person about that.
Yep.
So my next question is, in your role, how do you view the importance of financial education for all communities across Maryland?
It's a great question. Something we've talked about, a fair amount. And when I came to visit Legends, we talked about it. And, financial education is such an important part of education, period.
Absolutely.
Right? And, I remember I didn't get a lot of financial education in my school, where I went to school growing up in Montgomery County, but I actually have a memory of my mother sitting at the kitchen table with me and showing me how to balance a checkbook.
No doubt.
Right? I have a memory of my parents sitting down with me and explaining credit to me,
sure.
right? And them opening a credit card for me in my name so that I would establish credit, right? Just really important things. I didn't realize how instrumental that would be in setting me up for success and be able to get a mortgage later in life, but it matters. So we care a lot about that in the Office of the Comptroller, right? I'm like the elected CFO of the state.
No doubt.
And so we want Marylanders to be financially educated, to be financially empowered,
Absolutely.
right? And so we established a number of advisory councils early on in my tenure, and one of them is our Financial Education Advisory Council. And so we have somebody, Nicole, who works on those issues to really bring people together to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel, but to make sure that we are being thoughtful about how the Office of the Comptroller, how we can add to the conversation and add value, right? Whether it's, in the handouts that we leave for folks, like we have a financial education coloring book that we put out when we're tabling at fairs, right? But also about bringing people together, say, here's all the resources that exist.
Absolutely.
How can people access them?
Absolutely.
And where there are gaps, let's identify those gaps and figure out, is it a nonprofit that fills that gap? Is it government that fills that gap? And then we're also thinking about how do we create this space on our website, right?
Sure.
Like how do we have a virtual space to elevate this work and these opportunities on the Comptroller of Maryland website, which is a website that's visited by thousands and thousands of Marylanders looking for help in a variety of different ways. So, there's, I think, the basic financial education, and then there's also the financial education that's all about, like, how do you start a business?
Absolutely.
Right? And what does that mean?
Absolutely.
In that sphere, we're working with a lot of chambers of commerce to provide information. We recently created a 3-part webinar series with the Prince George's County Chamber of Commerce, where we recruited different speakers. We also did some speaking about different aspects of starting a business in Maryland and what that means. So really trying to be thoughtful and not reinvent the wheel, but add value and bring providers together.
And adding value is a function of financial education. But I am one now who loves to give individuals their flowers while you can smell them. Nicole is doing amazing work.
Yay.
So I have to shout her out.
Good.
She's doing some
Thank
great
you.
work.
We're really happy to have her on the team.
She's doing some great work.
Good.
And that story about your mom sitting you down, checkbook, because nowadays there is no checkbook. These kids are tapping on a cell phone.
Right,
So,
totally.
That's a great story. I'm going to steal that. I just want to let you know.
That's fine.
I'm gonna turn it to my grandma.
Finally, she showed me, and she adding and subtracting everything, and I was like, Mom, I don't think I need to do this. I think they do this automatically in my online bank account now.
No, but it is literally daunting and almost traumatizing, right? Like when I went to go get something from the store, I would give them a $5 bill and get $2 back. It's like, wait, like I gave you this, goods and services, but now they just tap. So there's no conceptualization of it.
No, it's really interesting. I mean, I have 2 kids, 11 and 6, and they are very into their allowance, right, and what they get for each thing, which is a way of sort of building financial education and awareness of money. But they also have no conception. The 11-year-old has it now, but the 6-year-old is still money grows on trees, basically.
Right.
It's in that little machine. We just go and we get it out.
We just go get it, right? Just put some plastic in and get the paper out. It's like,
it's magic.
Yay. Figure out my PIN code. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
So you spoke of the disparity in the communities, which is live and it is real. So my next question is, how do you see your role specifically contributing to equitable financial policies that uplift all Marylanders, particularly those from marginalized communities?
Sure, it's a great question. One of the things that we did when I became comptroller was we adopted a new vision statement for our agency to help guide the work that we're doing. And it's to work in partnership to create a state that's more equitable, more resilient, and more prosperous so that every Marylander can reach their full potential.
No doubt.
And so in that is really, to me, those are the sort of core priorities that we have. And so in terms of your direct question, some of the work that we're doing, I mean, there's so many things that we could list, like our policy work on the papers that we're doing. Actually, 2 things that I'll mention are just my role on 2 important boards. Because the comptroller is really interesting in that it is, my job really is elected CFO. I'm on a number of different boards acting as an independent voice and a check I'm also the revenue administrator, right? But those boards, there's so much power in government boards, and like people don't, like nobody knows they exist. So two of them in particular, there's the Board of Public Works and the State Retirement and Pension Board. So those are the two boards that really manage the most money of any entity in the state. So the Board of Public Works is three people: the governor, the treasurer, and the comptroller.
Okay.
We are responsible for overseeing, for approving or denying every state contract, almost every state contract over $200,000.
Wow.
As well as all grants to nonprofits, wetlands licenses, and like sales of properties that the state owns, like just a bevy of different things. So one of the things that we are very focused on, both Treasurer Derek Davis, from Prince George's County, myself, Governor Moore, is making sure that we are increasing the number of MBEs that are able to participate in our procurement work.
For sure.
So, so we are, the state set a goal a number of years ago of 29% of dollars should go to MBEs. And that's a subcontractor program.
Okay.
So it doesn't include primes, it's subs. And we haven't reached that 29% ever, not once. So we are, as a state. Yeah. So we are really interested in working at the agency level, working with other agencies to encourage them, to push them, to cajole them, to help them, to make sure that they are reaching that and getting closer and closer and closer and reaching and exceeding that 29% goal.
Do you find that they're just not getting the certification? They don't know about their certification?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. We've spent a lot of time over the past year and a half really digging into some of the challenges. One, the certification process is, I think, fundamentally flawed and too burdensome for MBEs.
Okay.
We make them do it every year. It takes too long. So MDOT, which runs the certification program, the Maryland Department of Transportation, they are working, they brought in a whole new team.
Okay.
And they are working to rethink the certification process. The second issue is that I think that there has been sort of a tendency to try to get to have larger contracts. And what happens when you get bigger and bigger contracts is that you have fewer and fewer contracts, and then they can only go or be responded to by bigger and bigger companies.
For sure.
And so we have made a concerted effort in our agency, and we're encouraging other agencies to break up those contracts.
No doubt.
So that they can be bid on by smaller contractors, by Maryland-based contractors.
Literally spreading the wealth.
Spreading the wealth. It doesn't cost us anymore, and I think that a case could be made that actually it brings some better value because we're able to keep more of that money in the state.
For sure.
So that we realize the revenue, right? If we're awarding a contract to XYZ Builders in Bowie, and they are, all the principals live in Maryland, well then they're getting more income.
Right.
They're paying taxes on that income.
Absolutely.
It's accruing to Maryland.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like a win-win.
Win-win.
So that's another reason. I think there's also just been challenges with the subcontracting and identifying primes versus subs and when it's appropriate. And so I think there's a whole bunch of work to be done in the procurement space, and that's something we're focused on. The second area is the pension system. So we have, the pension system is over $68 billion. Supports
68
billion with a B.
Wow.
Yeah. Supports over 415,000 state employees and retirees.
Wow.
And I'm the vice chair of that. Chairman is Treasurer Davis. And so we are very focused as well on diversifying our investments because we believe that will increase our returns, and that's being a good fiduciary. So if you look at any study, basically, it shows that black-led firms are doing, do just as well as white-led firms, and in some cases, do better. Firms with more diverse boards do better over the long term. Boards with more women do better over the long term. Have more patents, actually, which is interesting.
No doubt.
And so
it's the creativity.
Yeah. So we are really interested in making sure that we're investing with diverse-led firms to be a good fiduciary, but also in improving our Terra Maria program, which is our emerging managers program. So that's for sort of small managers who are managers that are often diverse-led firms.
Yep.
We are working to codify in our investment policy manual this emerging managers program
For sure.
to bring dedicated staff to it and to build it out. So that's been a priority of ours as well, and I'm excited about how it's going. But all of this is work that leads to wealth.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
Not just income, but wealth.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Work that leads to wealth. We're taking that too. Work. We're not taking it. We're going to ask. We're going to ask Madam Comptroller, can we use it? But
Yes.
work that leads to wealth. I like that.
Yeah.
Curvey, write that down, Curvey. We gotta write that down. I'm sorry, Dr. Chaku. But what I hear though in this conversation, Brooke, it's not like a boast about the things that you're doing, which is okay to do,
Right.
but I hear you talking about the things that you've identified as opportunities for improvement, and then you're solving them.
Yeah, that's
Right?
Yep.
And then I love quantitative. My degree is in engineering, so
Yes.
I obviously love number. If
Yes.
we don't watch any sports without it being a score, so we have to keep score.
Yep.
But you just said, I'm excited about the work that we're doing, right? Because of course we need to keep score, but if you're not enjoying the work, if you're not
Right.
excited about
Can't
the
do
work,
it.
then you just can't
No.
do it.
Yep.
So I
agree.
absolutely love that. And to comment directly to the viewership, go get that certification.
Yes.
Madam Comptroller just said that they're working on the process. It's every year. They're looking to get it better. However, right now, current state, go get that certification. Work on that certification. Work to wealth. Go after those contracts. So I'm
Yep.
imploring all my viewership to do that. Next question. In your role as state comptroller, how are you working to expedite change? You see how we threw that, the title?
Yeah,
You see
very
how we
nice,
threw that in
very
there?
nice.
And foster economic empowerment, specifically within communities of color?
It's another good question. So, I will go back to our Board of Public Works and the procurement work, also that pension work. So those are two that exist. But we also are trying to dig in and just be a more, be a thoughtful agency around how accessible we are and in what way. So for instance, I mentioned earlier, Prince George's County Chamber of Commerce, Alex is doing great work there. We went to him and his board chair and said, hey, we have a lot of information that we could share with your business owners. We also have contacts in other agencies and other places. So if it would ever be helpful to you, we'd be delighted to sort of put together a webinar, where we can share information with folks. So just trying to get the word out about that. So that's something that we, have been trying to be doing intentionally. Likewise, similarly, met with the Black Chamber of Commerce of Maryland to say, here's what we're doing. Here's how can we share more information with you? We'd love to have resources available for you. So really, it's like showing up
For sure.
and bringing substantive information and data to
Love
people. It's also using the data that we have and sharing it with folks in a way that they can get value from it.
For sure.
So we are the chief economist for the state of Maryland, the Comptroller of Maryland. And we have a division called the Bureau of Revenue Estimates.
Okay.
We estimate our revenues for the state, and that's what the state's budget is based on. It's, we showed on YouTube the 3 times a year we meet.
Nice.
It's not riveting. I'll be honest. I think it's really interesting.
For sure.
But if it gets 3 YouTube views, I'm excited. But the data that we're talking about is really good information.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be able to both present that data, but also to dig in on what we are hearing from employers. So we spent a year talking to employers, economic development professionals, and more. Took that data, took our quantitative data, and this past January produced a report on the state of Maryland's economy. And that report, it's the first time the agency has ever produced a report for the general population. So on our website at marylandtaxes.gov/research, really dug into what's working and what's not in our economy.
That had to be a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, 114 pages. It's a lot of work, but really important report to sort of set the stage about where things are.
For sure.
pulled out of that, one piece of our economy that is flourishing is our immigrants and their important role in our economy. We have a larger percentage of immigrants, than we used to in the state and then the nation as a whole, especially at working. So I think it's 16% of our population is internationally born. But they're over 20% of our workforce.
Wow.
So it's just really essential to fill a lot of the gaps and to do important work. But another piece we saw, so immigrants are doing well and are essential. A place that we saw falling off was women. So women left the workforce at a higher rate in Maryland than they did nationally.
Are they starting their own businesses? Or
so this is the question. So, some of them may be starting their own businesses and just haven't gotten big enough to register yet.
For sure.
But I think some of them also left because we have some of the highest childcare costs in the nation.
Yeah, good point.
And so we are now producing a report on childcare.
No doubt.
Working with the State Department of Labor because childcare is just fundamentally important part of a young couple's cost of living now. It costs a lot more to send your kid to childcare than it does to send your kid to the University of Maryland.
No doubt.
And you have 9 months to save as opposed to 18 years, right? If you can even find a spot.
For sure.
And then we're going to be looking at housing, an essential component of the cost of living. So we're trying, I guess my point is we're trying to use this data to be thoughtful, to help lift up some of the challenges that different communities are facing in the state. So that our policymakers, whether it's county execs or delegates or the governor, have this data and they can use it to pass bills and think about legislation.
Yeah, no need to even parse that data. I was looking at a statistic, and I think Prince George's County goes back and forth with maybe Stone Mountain, Georgia. But even Prince George's County is the most affluent place for African Americans
in the country.
Yep,
it's a really special place.
In the country.
Yeah.
But then you drive a little bit south to, some people use it as a colloquial or whatever. Some people are actually offended by it. But Ward 9, Southern Maryland, still Prince George's County. And there are some folks that are struggling. I have individuals in my school who they are affluent. They have means. And then I have students who they don't necessarily, and to be able to see that is so interesting.
There's a real diversity of income in Prince George's County. But it's also, its economy is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing in the state.
It is.
So it's, there's a lot of interesting and important things happening in Prince George's.
It actually, when we were in New York and thinking about leaving, we targeted Prince George's County because we just looked like we had just never seen anything like that across the country, except for, again, in Atlanta. But that was just a little too far south for us. We were like, no, I'm good. I like the change in seasons. We'll just skip here. But I just want to highlight, I want to go back really quick to that point that is really key when we start talking about financial education, that I don't know if we even talk about it enough, Equity Now or Legends, financial education for couples in that cost of childcare. That's a really good point that I think we're going to look for a specialist on Expediting Change, and we're going to bring somebody to have a conversation about that, because that's a really, really, really good point. We were a young couple with kids. I had my kids at 12, so they're 19 and 23 and now. When you said that, it triggered the trauma of how much it cost for me when I was working and my wife was working. It was brutal. And I don't know if we focus on that enough on Expediting Change, so thank you for that.
You look at Maryland's population, we have sort of two dynamics happening in our economy. One is that our labor force participation rate is less than it was before COVID, which means we have fewer workers, which is a challenge for businesses. But also our population is not growing. And actually the only reason our population grew in the past couple years at all was because of international migration. And we are seeing out-migration. We're seeing in-migration from higher cost of living states like New Jersey, New York, DC, but we're seeing out-migration at a higher rate to lower cost of living states like Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, Florida. There are lots of pieces to cost of living, but some of the biggest pieces are housing, or the biggest piece is housing, right? And we are in a housing crunch in Maryland. But the second, for young couples who are looking to set down roots,
For sure.
both want to work,
For sure.
right? Is things like, is childcare available?
Right.
And we have had one of the worst recoveries in the nation for childcare spots in Maryland.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. Yeah.
And that housing piece is impacted so much by the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area being so transient. Like it's literally a bubble here. Like I looked at one of my homes in New York, and well, specifically in Buffalo, so we don't say New York, because it would never be the case.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, and it was worth $167,000. It's a 6-bedroom double with like. That's 1.8 million here, right? Like that's a $2 million home here. So when you look at that, cost of housing it's a beast.
I could not afford to buy the house that I grew up in Bethesda. No way. Yeah. Which is sort of, I mean, I have a good job. My husband has a good job.
Right.
Like, I don't make a ton of money, but like I make enough. You
Right.
know, like it's crazy.
I'm CFO of the state and I can't buy this house.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
it's really, it's a real challenge.
Yeah, it is.
So,
it is.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Can you share any targeted initiatives or strategies that address the unique challenges that people of color, the immigrant community, I always talk about here the positive progression of the culture, so that these communities specifically face?
So, sorry, say the first part again.
No worries. Any targeted initiatives or strategies that you might have?
Yeah, so really a lot of it is about certification and MBEs, and about that immigrant report.
Yep.
So we are trying to elevate the experience and the importance of immigrants in the economy so that people understand that having a diverse economy is essential.
For sure.
And we need to make sure that we keep doing things like the General Assembly has sort of helped with some of the certification requirements, Maryland, so that if you're a doctor in Ghana and you move here, you don't, you could drive a cab if you wanted to, but actually we really need you to be working in medicine.
No doubt.
And we need to make sure that we're working to recognize your certification and your professionalship, right? So it's thinking about that. And so we highlighted that in the report that we did on immigration. And then really it's like, how do you start a business? What are the loan products available to you? What is the capital stack that you need?
Absolutely.
Like thinking that through, how can you get certified more quickly? What does the procurement pipeline look like? So those are the types of things that we're trying to work on and work with other agencies on, including the Governor's Office of Small Business, GOSPA. Finally, I'll say, I'm on a number of boards, and so we're doing work through those boards. Ms. BIDFA is the Maryland State Business Development Financing Authority. And they take some of our gaming revenue and invest in small businesses and minority-owned businesses, our MBEs. And then also, I'm the chair of a brand new entity called the Maryland Community Investment Commission, the MCIC. And the goal of this is to do investment in, try to get new markets tax credits to do development work in neighborhoods that have been neglected for a long time.
Nice.
And so that's another initiative that I'm really excited about. So I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of right now, but those are some of the things that we're, and our financial education work and more. So those are some of the things that I'm really, that I'm excited about. The final thing I'll mention is that we, as an agency, administer the largest anti-poverty program the government runs, the Earned Income Tax Credit. The Earned Income Tax Credit is the most powerful anti-poverty program in existence today, period. It says if you work and you make a certain amount of money, we refund you that money, right? And it's a refundable tax credit, so even if you have, you will get cash back.
For sure.
Up to, in some instances, over $10,000.
Nice.
It is real money.
Nice.
There's a federal Earned Income Tax Credit and a state Earned Income Tax Credit. Even though we administer this program, we've never been given any resources or money to build a marketing plan to let people know they qualify.
For sure.
And so we have hundreds of thousands of people who qualify for the state Earned Income Tax Credit and don't claim it.
Oh, no.
So
go claim it.
It's terrible.
I'm going to go look.
It's terrible.
Wow.
So, it's for lower income people. And I will tell you, I had this great story once of this woman who, she spoke at a press conference I was at, and think I'm remembering this correctly. She didn't know about the EITC, went to a tax clinic with the cash campaign. They told her about it. She qualified. She got money.
Nice.
She got a used car and then took community college classes.
Nice.
A few years later, she made too much to qualify for the EITC.
And that's the story.
That's the story.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Honestly, again, I almost said Brooke, but I like to say Madame Comptroller when we're on.
Yeah.
That's the marketing.
Yeah.
That's the marketing.
Yep.
Right? Because bad news beats good news all day.
Yep.
But when you have that one individual that says, this is what happened and here's how I did it, that's the marketing plan. Because individuals, even when they go on, if they go online to go look for it, when they see that a friend did it or a colleague did it,
it matters.
Now it matters, and it's the motivation to actually go do it.
So we are really focused on building a plan to do marketing and outreach for the earned income tax credit.
Nice.
So we secured money in the budget starting next July 1st to build out a whole plan around doing outreach and getting greater uptake of the EITC, which really helps build a middle class.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's getting people out of poverty, helping kids. So we're excited about that. One other initiative I have to mention before I leave is Direct File.
Okay.
So Direct File is a new program by the IRS. It is a free online mobile-first platform to pay your taxes. So you don't need to go to TurboTax. I mean, you can if you want to go to TurboTax, but you have the choice now to use this free system for both federal and, starting next year, state taxes.
It can't be FREE.
Yes.
TurboTax costs money.
Yeah. So we're really excited about it. You know, it's not for everyone. Eligible, we think there are going to be about 850,000 eligible Marylanders for folks who have, simple taxes, W-2s, simple income. But it will help a ton of people do it more securely, make sure they're getting their tax credits, like the EITC, the child tax credit. And they'll be able to do it directly, even from their phones.
That's dope.
So we're really excited about what that can mean for time and money savings for Marylanders.
I absolutely love that.
So yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience? You said a whole lot.
That was a lot. Just keep in touch.
For sure.
We are excited about launching a brand new website early next year that'll have more resources, will be more usable. We'll be building on it. Start simple, but build and build. Because we want people to have access to how to start a small business. What is the Board of Public Works? How do I pay my taxes? Where's my refund? Hey, I want to get my unclaimed property. All of the different things that are financial in the state, we want it to live someplace.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're working on. And I love doing this.
You can tell.
There's a lot more work to do. But I do know that the decisions that we are making, the work that we're doing, I might have a 4-year term, but this is work that's going to last for 4 decades.
No doubt.
And so we're trying to make it
Absolutely.
Make
work
it the best
wealth.
It can be.
Work to wealth.
Work to wealth.
I love it. I love it. And let us know how we got 900 children and families.
That's great.
So let us know how we can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help
that's
get
a
the word out.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to Expediting Change.
Thank you. It was great to be here. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for all that you do at Legends. Thanks for this podcast and for bringing these ideas and speakers to the world and to YouTube. And really appreciate your leadership.
Love it.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
This was so much. I don't even know where to begin. Once again, I keep getting goosebumps. I started this podcast, as you know, because I probably say it every other podcast, because I just like to talk. I just want to talk. And then I said, well, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, are going to get sick of hearing my voice. So let me bring some individuals on who will be able to assist you with the things because I don't know everything, right? So when you hear from Comptroller, Madame Comptroller, listen, when you talk financial education, her office is financial education. I mentioned it earlier in the podcast. As Madame Comptroller was speaking, she wasn't just saying that just the good things that they were doing or that they are doing, but the opportunities for improvement and then working on those opportunities for improvement. The other piece that I talked about during this conversation is you can absolutely see, I hope you can see it on camera because I can feel it here, that she loves to do this work. This is tough work, man. She kept a smile on. But listen, financial education and getting the word out, you heard Madame Comptroller say, if I get 3 likes or three views on my YouTube channel, that she would be happy. That means regardless of how many people are listening and looking at it, she's going to keep doing the great work that she knows is going to be impactful for not just communities of color, for not just those that are struggling, but for everybody, because everybody deserves to get this information about financial education. And I'm going to say it again because I really like the phrase, it's work to wealth. When you start with humble beginnings and then you work to wealth, you absolutely appreciate it. And then you begin to give back to help other individuals work to wealth. So if you have not had an opportunity to check out Madam Comptroller's website, please do. Make sure you go visit it and make sure you continue to tap in with Expediting Change. I appreciate you all for joining and logging on and staying with me. Have a blessed one.